Hey friends, I am so excited to introduce you to Sophie Toh. Sophie has been an entrepreneur since the early ages of 16. She is one of the top PR brands in the United Arab Emirates and has now since, after having the birth of her beautiful young daughter, has decided to shift her career into supporting more women in the Middle East as well as all over the world through her own personal experience. And I'm super excited to allow you to hear just a glimpse of the story that she is creating for herself and for generations to come. Welcome everyone to Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. I am your host, Diane Lozo. If you haven't followed me on my path to now, I have been channeling under my conceptual identity, my channeled inner essence as Lucy Smiles after almost 2 decades of the universe giving me my own personal nudge of finding my calling, finding my inner essence. And so my reason and my intention and my vision around this podcast is how can I allow other people through conversation with those who have really transformed their own life, had transitions. How can we allow the audience, my darling readers and now darling followers and audience and listeners to find that magic within themselves that can help them to find that inner essence and not only find it, but really ignite it. So today I'm so honored. I am sitting in the living room in Mexico with my darling friend, Sophie Toh, who's in her home in Dubai. So we have a bit of a time zone, shift. And I'm here in the morning and we're sitting with wonderful Sophie Toh in the evening over there in Dubai. And just a little bit about Sophie, but I will allow her to share her essence of who she is. Sophie and I met in Colombia just over a year ago, and we had private conversations talking about what we like to call the Colombia catalyst, ways that our life had shifted without even really knowing it, but really just bringing in that essence of things that we wanted to take a more, maybe I would call careful look at in our life, of things that we maybe haven't been birthing. And we will talk about birthing in a little bit as well too. But just before that, I just want to introduce Sophie. Sophie Toh is a successful entrepreneur, visionary, and new mama. Sophie has been in Dubai for 15 years. And in that time, she has also launched a very highly successful full-service PR business and company in Dubai. She has led high-profile campaigns everywhere from Four Seasons to Ferrari. And now Sophie has new insights on the future. And she's actually now birthing a new venture, having just birthed her new baby. She's a new mama, only 6 months in. And I'm just super honored, Sophie, to chat with you, to see where this will go. And again, my intention is how can we impact and influence other people through story? And one of the biggest catalysts for me, again, with my brand and Lucy Smiles, is who else needs to hear this conversation? And I'm just knowing that the right people for the right reasons and for the right global impact will be here to hear your story. So welcome to the Lucy Smiles Living Room.
Thank you so much. That was such a great introduction. And I'm here all the way in Dubai. It's evening time. But that's good. We have different moods. You're kind of bringing that kind of morning energy and I'm probably a bit more mellow. So we can, we have great chats. That's the thing about you. We met a year, it was only just over a year ago.
It was, so January 2023. We met in Colombia at Dr. Joe Dispenza's week-long retreat. And, I would love to dive right in. I want to dive right in now. I just got a thought around serendipity and synchronicities. And one of the things that you and I have chatted about on our couple of Zoom catch-ups, woman to woman, is, are we following those nudges? And, what are those maybe defining moments in our life where we say, okay, now I've got to do something about it. I'm seeing the signs more than once. I'm being called. And so I would love for you to start at the beginning around your story. what brought you into being an entrepreneur? What was that nudge? What was maybe a defining moment? Because you started off in the UK, so you are actually from the UK. So I would love to hear how things started for you.
Well, it's kind of weird. I guess I kind of, way back when I was 17 years old, it was a complete kind of serendipity moment when I actually broke my collarbone. And I was just trying to be kind of one of the boys at the time, and I fell off a motorbike and I broke my collarbone. And it was kind of one of those really important moments looking back, because I broke my collarbone, I couldn't play sport at school. And I was quite good at sport. I was kind of doing netball, which is kind of like basketball for English people. And I was doing netball. Netball is like, basketball.
Wow.
For girls. And I couldn't do that for like quite a long time because my collarbone was completely bust. And I had to do something with my Thursday afternoons because that was sports day at school. And through complete kind of lack of anything other to do, I kind of fell into this young enterprise scheme. And I started making scented candles. Scented candles back then were the thing, right? They were quite cool. And I made scented candles, and then I just kind of found my way into this kind of entrepreneurship competition in the UK, and I did really well in that entrepreneurship competition. And then from then on, I slightly had this, kind of vision in my mind of, I'm an entrepreneur. But looking back, and that's really defined who I am, because now I'm like, in everything that I'm trying to do, I'm like, at the heart of it, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want to get like stuck into different industries that I'm working in. I like to transition, knowing at the heart that, I've got this kind of entrepreneurial passion, I guess. But it's really funny when you look back, because it was complete luck. Well, maybe it wasn't luck, but at the time it seemed like complete luck that I couldn't play sports. So I just kind of discovered my inner entrepreneur, and it kind of went from there. And then I moved to Dubai again. It wasn't necessarily my decision to move to Dubai, but I did. And I fell into kind of setting up this PR agency, just because I felt I felt like it was the right thing to do. But it was very much because I had this vision of myself for the past 10 years at the time. I was 27 when I set my agency up, and I was 17 when I broke my collarbone. Wow. And it was very much about, I'm an entrepreneur, so I can do it. But that's kind of what it all went back to.
So being an entrepreneur in itself could be a challenge. It's a huge learning curve, right? There's a lot of different, I would not say skill set, but maybe mental strength that it takes to be an entrepreneur. So let's talk about that for a minute though, too, because you went to Dubai and started a business. Now there must be some different legalities. It's a different country. So now you're not just in a familiar territory, starting an unfamiliar venture, you're in Dubai. So was there anything that you felt that you maybe even learned about your strengths, but was that more challenging than you would think if you said, hey, I'm going to start a PR agency in the UK where I'm from?
It was borderline like insane, really, looking back at it. I mean, what kind of girl like goes out to like this weird country? And it was the middle of the financial crisis as well. So I don't know how much you know about Dubai, but Dubai in 2008 completely crashed. And I trotted off to Dubai. Yeah, the real estate market fell off a cliff, and I trotted off to Dubai. And at the time, my dad was like, he pulled me into a corner. He was like, Sophie, why are you going to Dubai? I'm like, I'm going to go. And I wasn't. I was like, no, why would you say that? No, I'm going to set up a PR agency in Dubai. So it was something that just kind of, I just felt the need to do, and I couldn't necessarily kind of sit down and understand why. I just felt it just felt like the right thing for me to be doing.
Now,
What was
the competition like then? Because I'm thinking Dubai, I've never been, but knowing the infrastructure in itself and just the vitality that area in the world is just thriving at now. What did that look like back then? Did you, and how did you run with that? If there's anything that you could say, this drove me to have that discipline, not only dedication, but a discipline to like walk in and just boots on the ground. Now you're in some,
Yeah, it was quite different. I mean, by the time I got started, it was 2009. And so I would say there was a little bit of luck, because the market then was like, it had slightly been kind of like raised to the ground, right? There was nothing. So it was a really good time in that kind of boom or bust cycle to get started.
Yeah.
And now, it's fiercely competitive. Dubai is now completely overheated, oversaturated. I mean, you can't even step out. I mean, it's incredibly hot, but the traffic is terrible. It just feels like a quite intense place now. But back in the day, it was a little bit more relaxed. So I didn't feel that scared by it. But I certainly had my moments being a kind of single woman running a PR agency. I mean, the kind of legislators, they couldn't get their head around what I was doing. So in their minds, I was like, I wasn't running a PR agency. The kind of government was like, well, we're going to shut you down because no 20-something-year-old has a PR agency and employs that many people. You're either printing fake passports or you're a pimp.
So what happened?
I'm none of the above.
How did you not run away and say, and just kind of like, okay, I'm out? Like what drove you to continue going? Because this is 15 years ago and you've literally now just shifted from launching and growing such a successful company. So how did you keep going?
I think because my mum didn't pick up my phone calls when I wanted to go home, probably. There was the conversation about, are you okay? Never coincided with the day that I wasn't okay, I think. But I mean, I don't know if you know much about the kind of Middle East, but the Emirati men, they still wear, white robes, and a headscarf. So they were deployed to my office where there were, rows upon rows of 20-something-year-old blonde women. And they just asked to see my contracts. And I showed them a contract and it was legitimate. So they went away.
So speaking of wardrobe, I remember you shared a story around specifically, and the contrast of saying, how the gentlemen of the Middle East walked into your office with their wear. And so there's a story that you shared around a conversation that you had with someone who pretty much said that you're not going to make it here based on your decision and your desire to wear pink. I would love for you to share that story. I remember you sharing that and what that looked like. And so that to me, because I had a story like that for me when I moved to Vancouver, where, I was excited, and I share this because it just really hit me when I heard, because I did have someone when I went to my first headhunting place in Vancouver for moving, never been in Vancouver, and she said, "You'll never make it here. Why are you here?" And so and she said, based on my resume, it was not based on my outfit. I was wearing all black actually, but I remember that story from my past when I just wanted to launch and I just wanted to be somebody and make it. So when I heard that story, when someone had that same type of, response to you for whatever that reason, can you share that with me? Because that could break a woman, that could break someone in Vancouver, Canada, let alone UK to Dubai, in that area. And then you still kept going.
Yeah, it was quite mean. I guess it was quite mean, but it was very much, this woman, she was European. And she believed what she was saying, I guess. And she was just like, you wear too much pink, you'll never make it. Which is quite a kind of sweeping statement to make, isn't it? Given that this woman wasn't even that, it was quite a bold statement for her to make, I think. Anyways, but no, I mean, it did knock my confidence. And that's why I think it's, it's really important. I really have been proud I've managed to employ quite a lot of women. And in my next venture, it purely is about helping women, trying to kind of magnify that. And I think it is really, really, I think you have to be really, really careful, and you have a responsibility to not say that to girls when they're starting out in their career. I think it's quite, I'm dangerous is the word, because it did stay with me and it did knock my confidence, because I'm still bringing it up.
However many,
we're still bringing it up, right? And however many years later.
Something. Yeah.
And I think I'm just quite, sometimes if you tell me to do something, I do the opposite. So I went out, and then my first proper office that I had for the PR agency, I painted the whole thing pink. And in hindsight,
brilliant.
No, but it was so bad. I actually cringed because I'm like, what was I thinking? Probably this woman was still in my head, but it was inappropriate actually to have a pink office when I was trying to be taken seriously. And I still wear pink. I still love pink. I think pink is a great color. The logo of my new company is pink.
I love it.
I think I just think if you're just a female employer, just stop perpetuating the stereotype of being kind of bitchy.
I think that's true. And it's like you said too, the word dangerous is, I think that makes sense. And also just responsibility as women.
Yeah.
And I think it does not support the narrative or, that stereotype of, can we make it like the men can? And I'm certainly not a feminist, but I also do believe in women raise women, like we can help women rise. And I think, my own personal experience as well too, is that I feel a sense of responsibility to help women see the best in themselves and to be able to be of support and not to be, working against each other, because we in groups can literally change the world. And I remember meeting you for the first time in Colombia, and you were wearing pink. I remember you had a pink cool skirt on. I'm pretty, like a white t-shirt and like really cool pink skirt. I would have to, but I do remember that. I'm like, oh, she's amazing. Yeah.
Yes, and actually coming back, and if I was to get a tattoo, and I'm not really a tattoo person, but if I was, Joe Dispenza in Colombia on the last day, he just got up on the stage and he was saying, strong women will change the world. And I do think back of that, like sometimes I'm like, yes, and I kind of, if I was going to get a tattoo, I would. But
there you go.
Yeah, I think, but it's really exciting to be kind of female now. I think, companies for a long time, just coming back to that whole masculine energy thing, I think for a long time, people who have excelled in companies have been people who have kind of had that very masculine, lunches for losers or whatever the expression is, kind of like have to work kind of like 20 hours days and prove yourself like a man, right? I think that very much was the kind of pattern that certainly I was told in growing up in the UK of like how you become successful. Yeah. And I think it's interesting the older you get to kind of question that and say, well, actually, I have skills that they don't work when I've worked 20-hour days and then I've had 4 hours sleep and I keep going. My skills is more about kind of intuition and empathy, and those things need sleep, and that's what I can bring to the table. I don't need to just be a guy to get ahead. And actually, I've written a letter, a kind of, I don't know what the letter is, like a kind of statement, which will go on the new website of the company I've done, which starts, as a child of the 80s, I was taught that to hustle was to win, and I took that philosophy and I ran with it. And I set up a company. I was like, right, to be successful, I'm going to have to work 16-hour days for 10 years straight. Yeah. And then, and then I'll be successful. And I think it's interesting to kind of challenge that. And the more women that do, probably the better, I think.
Right. I think there's a place for everything too, but I also do believe that, and there's still a hustle culture. And for my own experience as well, like in the last 9 years building my health brand, I realize it just doesn't feel good. And I don't create from that space optimally like I would through intuition, empathy, authenticity, and my own genuine, heart and essence. And I feel that you could see the difference. So what we're saying is not to say that we don't act, but with the inspired action, where are you operating from? I think that's the biggest thing. And I know you and I, not only, and I do want to touch and circle back with Dr. Joe, but also, we follow Abraham Hicks and the law of magnetism. It's not so much the law of attraction. I want a red car, so the red car will come. But, that inspired action and where are we operating from? And I think as well too, or I feel, I should say, is that when we tap into that creative energy, we can get more done, right? Because we're in the being, not just the doing. And then the doing shows up as a byproduct of us being in that essence. And so I would love for you to share, because again, you've had probably 3 changes, 2 to 3 big changes since I met you in Colombia. What happened, or what can you say really shifted your consciousness, maybe your inner essence, your wisdom through the meditation of Dr. Joe or other types of grounding ways that you have allowed yourself to maybe tap into more of a feminine essence? So I do want to, recognize, number one, you're birthing your new business, which I'm so excited about. We've chatted about it's so needed, especially in Dubai and in the Middle East, where you're focusing on and growing globally. But you've also birthed your new beautiful daughter, Viola. And I would love to look at the contrast of your role in PR leadership and running this highly successful full service communications company to now where you're going, not just as a mom, but also in this new business. Do you feel that there's a shift that you will be in terms of the masculine versus feminine energy, and how are you feeling around that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think sometimes in life you need, proactively went to Colombia, right? No one forced me. I paid money to go there. But I think sometimes you do need something in your life to slightly kind of act as a as a kind of pivot point or an inflection point. You know, you kind of almost need to kind of go to do something, you know, like Colombia is a long way from Dubai. You know, it was like it was a big thing, right, to go. And I think sometimes maybe subconsciously, you know that you need it, but it was such a kind of huge, you know, you kind of look back, and January 2023 will be a really important kind of turning point in my life, because 2022, just coming back to 2022 for me, it just became the systems I was working were faulty. You know, in hindsight, you know, the things that I was doing that had served me quite a long time in my career, in my personal life, they just came to a head. And I just got to the end of 2022 and I was like, do you know what? This isn't working. You know, working this way isn't working. I would really want to have, you know, a child. It's not working. You know, I had this beautiful dog that I'd had for many years and he just died very suddenly. And I was just like, you know, when you're just feeling like, And I think it took kind of Colombia to kind of give me the confidence or give me the focus, I think, just to really kind of reconnect with who I am, how I operate, what's going to kind of make me fulfilled, and really giving you that, I was that community, you know, we met there, you know, giving you those kind of like-minded people that in a way they give you permission, and then you give yourself permission to make some changes. And I think, that was really important, you know, just being able to say, it's okay, just because this worked for so many years, it's okay that it's not working now. It's okay that you can kind of change. And it worked beautifully for me, you know, it really did. I'm on the Dr. Joe website doing a video about literally, you know, I went down every kind of like health intervention that is known to mankind. You know, being a kind of a professional like you know, you make a list of being like, right, you know, why can I not have children? Let's make a list of 20 things I can fix. Didn't work. And then, you know, I went to Dr. Joe and slightly shifted my mindset. And then, you know, I kid you not, within 2 weeks, I fell pregnant. And, you know, it was that quick. And then, you know, my work took a little bit longer because, you know, this corporate world is a bit slower, I think. You can't leave some things immediately, but it, you know, I very much set the tone of kind of turning a ship. And then a year later, you know, I have a beautiful daughter, and, you know, I'm exited the PR agency, and focusing on something else. So in hindsight, it was huge.
It is huge.
It was really good. Yeah, really good.
Do you find, because again, 15 years building your own, super successful. Like, I know I've seen the clients that you've worked with, everyone from, again, Four Seasons, Ferrari, Airbnb, Viacom, all of these, like, I mean, it's a laundry list. Now, I find, you know, sometimes people don't understand where we can grieve. And so I would love to know, because people think, okay, grief, loss of your dog, grieving, you know, loss of, you know, family members, or loss of certain things, relationships. But there must have been, do you feel that there was a grieving point? Did you notice that you were grieving, and, you know, the loss of moving into a different, even though it's beautiful, you've got a beautiful daughter, what we're going to share around your SheWell business, which is so impactful. Did you sense any kind of grieving? Did you notice anything? And then if you did, is there anything that you did to ground yourself around that, leaving that chapter of Sophie, the well-known, you know, successful entrepreneur, and what you've created is huge. So I would love if you could just give us a window into that.
That's such a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know how you have the insight to ask that, but yeah, credit to you. Yes. Yeah. And that kind of is surprising, isn't it? Because you're like, but everything's going in really exciting direction. But it's just that, you know, you kind of leave behind things. And I think it can almost kind of surprise you. Yeah, I was saying to someone yesterday, you know, even if you kind of say, well, I actively want to leave this job, you know, and I actively want to, you know, kind of have a family and spend more time at home at this part of my life, there's still a kind of huge part of you that is tied up in that past life. And you have to really kind of, you have to kind of give it space to kind of be. Right? You can't just be like, oh, that's a ridiculous feeling because I should feel like this, you know, and there have been, you know, it's been kind of quite a reflective time. I think, you know, certainly kind of earlier this year when I came, you know, I was in Dubai, and, you know, all of the kind of company stuff was unwinding, and, you know, just quite a lot of walks. I live near the beach. quite a lot of walking on the beach and just saying, well, actually, I should be on a conference call right now, and I should be on a plane to Saudi Arabia, and I should be doing this, and I'm on a beach. And even though you have all the happiest things around you, like these things, it takes time. There's something kind of dying there, and it is very, it's surprising, but I think, like with all of these things, you just have to kind of say, okay, this is the way that I'm feeling today. And actually, it was only yesterday that I had a kind of lunch with my chairman, and it was a kind of goodbye closure lunch. And it was really nice, but it was very important to do things like that, to sit down, even though there was no real agenda for lunch. It was just a catch up. We ended up chatting for 2 hours. And it's really important, I think, for me to have those moments of saying it's not a waste of time because we're just having lunch. It's actually really important to me that we have conversations, we reflect, we both kind of feel good about how we leave that lunch and our relationship moving forward, which is very different to when we work together. But no, I think it just takes time, and you just have to be respectful of that, and not just be like, oh, well, I should be happy and I should be got everything that I want. It can be quite melancholy. That's a very English word.
I love it, especially when you say it with an English accent.
Melancholy. Yes, beach walks in the wind, in the rain, and being like, this matches my mood. But I think, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, that the company was very much my first child. And
it's amazing. There's 3 things that came to me while you were chatting. I may not remember all 3, but the first one was you're walking on the beach instead of being, in the boardroom. So there's grieving there, because as someone who has run their life in inspired action, not just hustle, but inspired action, probably as a creative, always thinking about, getting downloaded. So that walk on the beach definitely has grieving. Do you think that there is something in that where you maybe feel, do you ever have guilt of am I allowed to be this happy? I was so busy. I was always, running the show, helping the people run the show with me. Do you feel that sometimes you can have this sense of am I allowed to have a walk on the beach after 15 plus years, or even, decades of working and being okay with a beach walk? Right?
Yeah, and it's not even guilt. It's actually the kind of mild terror, because it's like, it's scary. And I guess that's what kind of quite motivating, but it's just like, it's disorientating. You're like, oh my God. But that kind of, I think that kind of discomfort, if you were talking back to Joe Dispenza, he's always like, if you're in the kind of middle of change, it's uncomfortable, right? When you're in the middle of that river, it's easier sometimes to swim backwards, to swim forwards, right? Absolutely. So again, you just have to be like, this is where I am today. And being really blunt, when you're used to so many years to having kind of every month end, you get a salary, right? Absolutely. And then all of a sudden you're like, God, I'm switching to going back to starting something else from seed level. And you're like, even though it's a kind of irrational thought of like, oh, I can't pay the rent because, you're in a slightly different circumstances, it's still hugely disorientating. And this is a really good question. And I think it's just, it's kind of probably a good reminder to people listening that even from the outside, you might be on Instagram and you go, oh my goodness, they've sold their company and they've had a kid and all that stuff. And then, you feel really bad about yourself. But then remember that actually all of that good stuff does come sometimes with quite bittersweet, complex feelings as well. So it's not, don't feel bad if you're looking at someone and being like, God, they've just nailing it, and I'm not.
Right. It's everyone's nailing it on Instagram. Everyone on Instagram is Instagram happy, right? For the most part. But I
blessed. Really hashtag blessed.
Hashtag grateful. And it's true. So there's another thing that prompted me around agenda. So having lunch with your chairman, having that conversation, a different relationship. I had this conversation with a friend of mine here in Mexico the other day. We were talking about having our own deadlines, and sometimes we have deadlines, right? But I feel that same thing where I have this sense of guilt. Like, it's Wednesday. Am I allowed to just be today? And I will tell you though, once I get over the, yes, you can just be, because after, again, with myself, just like you, 9 years of building something, busy, running teams, making sure everyone's okay. Now the energy of what I've launched is like, now all that energy is coming back to me. I almost don't know what to do. Like, oh, I'm just answering to me now. Still building my business, but now that my focus and my energy on what my inner essence is that's calling me to launch this community, is that guilt, or I always have to have an agenda. So what is now on my agenda? Instead, because I could share this from my own experience, is that so much creativity comes in when I'm not having an agenda. Whether it's literally, for some people it's in the shower, which absolutely, for me, it's just walking my dogs without my cell phone. I'll bring my cell phone with me if it's early morning or at night, where I'm like, okay, just in case. But I notice, like, once I let go of the agenda, all these beautiful insights come in that won't be there if I'm in that agenda. So agendas are great. And then not having one is also great. And I think that power of birthing that through just creative energy or Mother Nature or the walks, or maybe even walking meditation, because that's for me where all this came in Colombia, is the one walking meditation. And so giving ourselves permission, and not only permission, I loved how you said permission in our community. Say, just as an example, Dr. Joe, there's so many beautiful communities out there that I could name a list of 10 spiritual, conscious, business masterminds that help you to be, proximity is power. But I also would like to say, even more than just permission, it's a confirmation that, we are meant to do big things. And so even with this, this podcast, speaking with someone like yourself, who I asked you to be on my podcast over a year ago before my podcast even was birthed, is following that North Star. And that's why I have my logo here, is that we are all so different. Our North Star is so different. And so my logo itself is just like your own North Star is going to be completely different. It's like a snowflake, mandala type thing. So giving ourselves that confirmation that we are meant to be doing great things. And it's not supposed to happen right overnight. We don't just go from here to there without that in between. There's a song, I wish I could remember the name of the artist, but it's like, you can't jump the track of life. So I would love to kind of unpack that. If you can unpack that last 15 years, talk about going into this beautiful brand that you have, SheWell. If you could share a lot about that. And then maybe, is there a different way that you're operating through this birthing that you've noticed that may be different than the Sophie masculine energy corporate type of successful environment that you had previously?
No, it's really interesting what you're saying there, because I kind of completely agree with it. I mean, I was the person, just coming back to Colombia, which was that kind of inflection point for me. I was the person at Dr. Joe. So people that listening, so when you go to Dr. Joe, you have a registration day before you actually get into the kind of program, right? Yeah. And you show up. And I have been sent an email, like everyone had before, being like, okay, so you show up on, let's say, Sunday afternoon at 4, and then the program ends the next Sunday at 12, right? And that was it, wasn't it? Yeah. So I'm the person that kind of shows up at the desk, and I'm like, excuse me. And I'm coming in from, like my Dubai corporate world, still very much answering emails, and PR. Excuse me, I think I've missed the email where there's the schedule. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, I know we start today and we end on Sunday, but like, what happens in between? Like, when do we start? When do we stop? And this man just kind of looked at me. And my husband was like, oh, please be quiet. You're sounding really uptight right now. And he was just like, well, we start when Dr. Joe wants and we finish when he ends. And what I will tell you this, one day we start at 3:30. Mm-hmm. And I said, AM. He was like, yeah. I was like, oh. And I was like, so I didn't miss an email with the timetable on. He was like, no. And I think that's really the first time in my life where I've kind of had to been slightly embarrassed into being like, okay, cool, sounds great. No timetable. But that's kind of in a way set the tone, because when you don't have, it is, again, it's quite disorientating when you're coming from a corporate world where it's all like 5-minute windows, and you're just literally scheduled up, and the fuller your diary, the better, right? It's a success metric. Are you in demand? Are you busy? It's as successful as, well, you must be doing good things if you're so busy and you kind of don't have a window. And then all of a sudden to kind of go the other side of that, and you're like, well, yeah, exactly. It's a Wednesday. Am I allowed just to kind of think? Yeah. And it's really amazing. And I think this is probably it's a really important reminder that you do have to think. This is the stage when you're kind of creating something new. You do have to sit and think, because if you're trying to do something thoughtful and meaningful, it needs thinking time, right? Yeah. And but it is a very, it's a kind of slightly disorientating thing to do, particularly if you're used to just rushing through your day and then being like, right, okay, I'm in the office at 8. and then I'm going to leave, and then I have an evening event, and I don't have time to think.
Yeah.
I'm just going. I'm just in the day, and the day kind of takes me along, and I don't have to. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, all I have to do is think.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think it's really, really important. I remember saying to someone, I'm writing a kind of big deck on SheWell at the moment, and just saying to someone, is it okay that I'm taking so long to think this through? And she was like, it's not okay that you're thinking it through. It's necessary that you're thinking it through.
Wow.
Otherwise you'll just launch something that, will fail, because it won't be, you won't have researched it. Yeah. So it is, but I think it's okay. You have to keep reminding yourself it's okay. This is, we're in different cycles, right? When you're trying to be creative, you are creative when you just are receptive. And when you're just doing, you're just executing. You're not creating at all. You're just executing. But and again, I mean, talking about masculine, feminine, I think it's possible to put on, masculine energy is about getting stuff done, right? It's about getting through the day, and you haven't had enough sleep, but you're just powering through, and you have enough of the coffee, and that's the way it is. And that's very much a kind of way that I think I was taught, maybe just absorbing kind of films when I was like Wall Street, when I was like growing up, or I was like, this is what watching the men make money and being like, this is what you need to do. But very much now, and I think we were talking earlier, when I was, before I understood with my daughter whether I was pregnant with a girl or a boy, I was very much in that headspace of, I can't possibly have a daughter. Like, I just don't feel that I have that kind of feminine vibe going on. This is a boy, and then I did the test. I did the test to figure out whether I was having a girl or a boy, and it was a girl. And again, it was another moment, and now it's the most natural thing in the world. It's like, of course, I was always going to have a girl. But at the time, I was just so much caught up in that kind of hustle culture. I found it very difficult to imagine that I would be able to kind of create that kind of soft energy. And but through doing that, my new company is very much about helping women, and now it feels very natural. But I think we're just conditioned sometimes to get into worlds that aren't authentic.
It's interesting because as you're sharing that story, and I want to go deeper into this feminine energy, and I also want to go deeper in the difference between theory and practical. So we learn about the river of change with Dr. Joe Dispenza and other, it's just, there's so many different examples of that and different teachings and philosophies around this, which you could find your own. I always say, you find the voice that mentors you the best. And Dr. Joe just happens to be one of in our beautiful toolbox of groundingness and all of those things. So the river of change is real. And then when you experience the river of change and the unknown, you're going into the unknown, that's when you're like, okay, now I understand what he was saying for 7 days and, a million meditations. So powerful. So you're in the river of change, you're in the unknown, you're going from masculine, and now you're going from being a new mom, first time mom, what an unknown. And now going into that feminine role, which again, you've always had, but you maybe dominated in certain aspects to build what you did. And now you're building something new. So can you touch on what the unknown felt like for you? Is there anything about you, your essence, that came up that you're like, wow, I didn't know this about me, because now I have a reason and this opportunity that's come forth with Viola as a new mom? If you could share what that looks like in terms of the unknown and how you're going to utilize this new energy and more about your SheWell around women and supporting women from reproductive to hormone, like all of the in between, which I think is so impactful. I would love to touch on that.
Well, I think maybe to start with, kind of to rewind to when I was at university and starting out the company, I think I just didn't have the kind of the tools to be able to kind of explain what I was doing. But actually, when I was at university, I studied politics, and then I kind of actually just ended up kind of doing my focus. They call it different things in the UK, but I basically focused on feminism. And I wrote all of these kind of essays about feminism. And at the time, I couldn't really explain to anyone why I just felt so strongly about this topic. And then I think, and so I just kind of was a bit embarrassed and be like, it just seemed like an easy topic or something, because no one would have me down as a feminist, because I was, I wasn't kind of angry enough. And then, when I set up my company, I think, looking back at it, it was very much, I just want to help women have a nice job, a job that they like, rather than a job that they kind of cry about on Sunday night, like I used to. Wow. So, but again, I think I was maybe a bit shy to kind of really just say that is my purpose. So actually kind of looking back, I think it's always been there, but I think this is probably the first time that I'm standing up and saying, actually, no, this is the real purpose of what I'm trying to achieve, is to help women. It's kind of been kind of a more kind of whisper, or kind of inside what I've been doing. But certainly with the PR, it just became, once you have kind of merger and acquisitions, and once you have kind of finance teams on it, it always diverts from what it was trying to be at the beginning. But yeah, so no, I mean, SheWell is very much, it just feels very authentic to where I am now and what I've experienced over the past 10 years. I say about, or, the past kind of few decade or so. And, without kind of going into too much detail, I found it, probably because I was rushing around working 16-hour days and pretending to be a guy, I found it very hard to not even have children, fall pregnant. Do you mean, like, completely candidly? It's not really a health discussion we're having, but I had significant challenges, and those challenges were, again, something that I kind of was like, okay, fine, but I'm still going to I'm not going to change my lifestyle, but I'm just going to go to the doctors and spend money and do what they tell me to do, which was very kind of narrow in terms of medical philosophy. It was very much based on, well, if you want to kind of create healthy eggs, just take more drugs. If you want to kind of, when you're getting into kind of territories of IVF and egg freezing and all of that stuff. And I just did it without really thinking. And it was only for me when I really kind of sat and thought about myself. And I, fortunately, through Dr. Joe and other things, I managed to kind of have the, the foresight to understand that this wasn't a body thing that I was going through. It was a body-mind thing, right? Yeah. And body-mind, you can't just say, okay, I've got a problem, I've got a medical problem, I'm going to treat the body of this. Yes. It's like, no, it's more connected. Your body is connected, right? If you want to create, if you want to birth, your mind is such a kind of fundamental part of that. And I managed to kind of draw the dots on that myself, and, was doing things like Dr. Joe and kind of other things. And I managed to, at a relatively old age, get pregnant naturally. But all of that kind of, all of that adventure that I went on for many years just really opened my eyes to the opportunity in the market, particularly in Dubai, for offering kind of fertility services for women, and not even fertility services, just education from quite a kind of relatively young age, about, that connection, and just really helping women kind of understand, absolutely, you go for it, you can do the kind of medical protocol, but have you thought about, adjusting your diet? Have you thought about getting your mind into shape with whatever you need? Have you thought about the way that you're moving your body? Have you thought about the way that you're kind of managing your kind of friendships? All of this stuff that I know is just so integral into being healthy, quote unquote. So SheWell is very much, it's a few things. It's a digital platform. And I've asked amazing people from around the world to contribute just articles about the kind of body-mind connection when it comes to fertility. And it's just going to be out there. It's not a commercial enterprise. The website's just going to be out there for anyone, specifically me 10 years ago. Anyone just to find, we're going to really work on the SEO, so hopefully people can find it easily, but just anyone to find when they're browsing and just read an article that hopefully might just inspire them, or be like, that really connects with me. So that digital resource is just about community and education, again, not with a kind of proper commercial focus. But then really I do want to have a clinic, and we'll set the first clinic up in Dubai with some amazing doctors. And it will just be approaching this problem of fertility, which is a problem I won't go into. Again, it's not really a health conversation, but really just kind of giving that a clinic and giving a space where patients, or they're not even sick, these women, anyone exploring their fertility options, is presented with the kind of 360 of body mind, and they can explore it whatever way they want. They can just say, no, I'm not interested. Give me the hormones. Thank you. I'll be on my way. Or they can actually say, no, I'd rather not do the hormones, but can I have a conversation with someone about getting my, really getting kind of mentally prepared for this? And they can do that.
Wow.
Or actually, I'm really not happy with the way my health. Can I work on that? And it's just giving options about how you can kind of get to the same result.
I think that's so brilliant. One thing that I'll share with you that you mentioned that I'm like, yes, this is when the old self now grows, and now you're able to help your old self, right? You said,
yes, exactly.
Your literally your niche is the you that you used to be, and I feel that is such a great, organic, and very not only relatable and empathetic, but authentic and genuine place to be, because you're filling a gap of something that was missing for you. The other thing I wanted to touch on as well, we had a brief conversation last week catching up, was that this is not prevalent in Dubai or in the Middle East at the moment. So you're bringing in, you saw something as an entrepreneur, as a visionary, a gap that needs to be filled, which obviously, can grow globally, but you are just filling a gap that, energetically and compassionately you're seeing that is needed. And I think that's so powerful to be able to witness that and do something about it, right? So what does that look like?
So I'm not here to say that anyone is doing anything right or wrong. Everyone is just doing, but my observation is that there are some amazing kind of services in the US, particularly, who are doing this. And I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just kind of pointing out what I didn't exactly like, what I needed 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 2 years ago even, but I'm just pointing out the simple fact that, in the UK, there's a government guideline that if you are doing IVF, you are offered mental health support, the option of, right? And in America, this is kind of well and great. There's an amazing company called Kindbody, which is, I think, got like 35 plus clinics across America. The woman that founded that, I think, is a genius, Gina. And again, they're doing this. And so I'm just kind of saying, well, actually in Dubai is a market where I think, the medical profession has, people have come from overseas to do, it's an international community, right? They've come overseas. So all I'm trying to do is just import some sort of best practice in that particular area to the Middle East, because I don't think it's there. I don't think it's necessarily being executed as well as it could be. And exactly that, when I have my more, my deeper moments with Dr. Joe and other stuff, it is for me always about having a conversation with myself, my future self, and being able to kind of ask her for some help. And she's not always that helpful, but it is always about that kind of. I'm like, come on, tell me what to do. It is always back. Yes, come on, you've got all the answers, don't you?
Don't you? Yeah.
Don't you? Please tell me you do. So yes, exactly that. It's always just kind of, whenever you create something, it's always about, this is really what I just thought, what I think is needed.
Yeah.
And it can be, and go from there. It might fall flat on its face. It might do really well. It might be somewhere in between, but that's okay, because it's an expression of who you are. Mm-hmm. And it's your contribution based on your knowledge, right? So I think if you start from that point, you're just like, no one can really knock that. You're like, this is what I do. This is who I am. And this is what I'm here to do. So it takes the pressure off, I think, sometimes.
It's beautiful. And it is exactly like why I'm here too, is that finding the expression of who we are uniquely. And then you're not worried about what other people think. I read a book called The Courage to Be Disliked. It's very Adlerian theory.
I've read that. I've read it.
Right. And it's brilliant. And I'm like, when I first started reading the book through my book club months ago, I thought it was just going to be this pop culture type of like, don't worry about what people think of you. No, it got real deep. But in that book, thankfully I read it, and it is the courage to be disliked. It is the courage to be a pioneer. It is the courage to like not let other people dim your light. And it's not easy in our society, and it's not easy. You and I grew up, I'm 70s, 80s gal as well too. We didn't have social media. We didn't have phones. Mm-hmm. We didn't have all of these really heightened, I don't want to call them struggles, but like the, societal pressures on us as women, like we do now. And I really believe that in what you're doing with SheWell, I look at my life back back in the day, thank God there was yahoo.ca as a Canadian, because I went through my own hormonal chaos in my early 20s with birth control, with a specific, I won't get into the health component of that, but if I didn't find this community on Yahoo who was the answer to my prayers, because I will tell you this, as you had mentioned, if women in the Middle East, we'll just generally revisit what you said, if they're going through IVF, if they're going through this type of procedure for birthing and for building a family, they have mental health support. So if you don't, and you don't have mental health support, I know for myself, and maybe you could tell me if this resonates with you, I didn't know I was going through something because I wasn't told that I could be going through something because of what I was going through. And so then you think, well, I'm normal. I shouldn't be upset. Why am I depressed? Look at my life. Like, I have nothing to be depressed about, but I'm depressed. And so I really believe that what you're doing is not only a portal for women and families. So it's not only the women, it's their husbands, it's their other like children. It's not only helping the woman, it's helping their own community, is understanding that without the support and the knowledge, we may not give ourselves permission to be hurt, permission to be sad, permission to be confused as to what we're going through as women, because that is who your niche is. So I really value what you're doing. And now you've been able to, take it up 10 notches, versus what we used to go through when we only had like an engine on Yahoo or Google.
Yes.
Now you're creating that community. So I think what you're doing is so valuable. And the essence of who you are and what you've done over the last 15 years as not only an entrepreneur, but a pioneer, right? And just someone who is seeing a gap and filling it. And so what you're doing, you have no idea what that residual impact is going to be. And chances are it's not going to fall on its face, right? But I think when you have your why, which is the old self that could have used this 10 years ago, nothing could really stand in your way if you don't allow it. And that unknown that we went through with Dr. Joe, it's worth the discomfort. It's worth it to be able to see. And one of my mentors, Colin Sprake, I will call him out. Maybe he recycled it, but this is something that he shared with me, and I'm looking forward to having him on the podcast, as he talks about something called the Universal Challenge Line. So the UCL. And so a lot of times, many people can, and I've done it in the past, and I'll probably still do it. I'm still human in Earth School, is we get to that universal challenge line and we hit our heads on it. And we just want to go back. We don't get to see what's on the other side. So if we're willing and we surround ourselves, and I would love to talk about that as well too, about community and environment and influence, when we allow ourselves to make sure we're having the conversations that are inspiring, making sure that we are around people who are also, being their essence and looking to create impact and change in the world, it's easier for us to get to that universal challenge line and say, okay, I've got this. What tools do I need to get over it? Maybe it's not going to be overnight, probably going to have some bruises, cut knees, maybe even like, a nosebleed, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to that unknown, because it's so important to me that I'm not going to give up just because I don't get to see the fruits of my labor. So does that resonate with you? Or is there any tools that you use besides meditation that allow you to just not give up on days where you're like, am I even going to do this? Is this even going to work? Everyone else is doing it. How does that work for you in terms of grounding yourself?
Yeah, it's really easy. I mean, I have a lot of kind of self-doubt, and I think everyone does, right? About, what you're doing. And it's really scary just to kind of put your neck on the line and say, I'm going to do this. And, there's a taboo as well, particularly in kind of women's health. There's a taboo about all of this stuff. There is a kind of, there's a challenge in the Middle East that people aren't comfortable talking about mental health in the way that they are in the US. There's a cultural thing. And, I think when you just kind of have a million, sometimes, you've got a million reasons why not to do something, right? Why it would be kind of easier. But I think you just always have to just say, you have to flip that thinking on its head, right? And be like, yes, okay, if I didn't do this, yes, I would probably not spend that money on a website that might not do anything. I'll go on a nice holiday, whatever it is, a million reasons why, you wouldn't do that. But then for me, what works is just like, yeah, but what if it does work?
Yeah.
What if it does work? Exactly that. What are the conversations that might arise out of this? For me, I find it quite motivating to have, just quietly write down, having some really big goals out there, and just kind of say, well, it does work. I might be able to have a conversation with the Dubai government about extending maternity leave. I might be able to have, a conversation and contribute some data and research that would then influence how policy has made. You can, I think if you can get yourself more excited about what the possibilities than the 1,000,001 reasons that are going to drag you down and make this thing fail, I think you can always find your way to kind of keep going. And I'm always a bit like, well, what's the worst that really is going to happen here? Really, what is the worst? I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to have to get a full-time job.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a few things that go on, but I think it's just, you've got to get yourself excited about, well, when I get over this line, or when I get through this river, whatever, if this goes the way that I think it can go, that's always going to be more exciting than the million reasons of, oh, your friend doesn't think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And actually, coming back to that as well, I do find it really, really important to think quite carefully about I'm not talking about like culling friends, but I think it's really important to think about who you're kind of associating with on a professional level and a personal level, and making sure that each year those people really are feeding you.
Yeah.
And kind of pushing you forward, because I think there is definitely a danger that, again, you can get a bit stuck in some friendships. And you don't need to ghost people, you don't need to kind of upset people, but I think you can purposefully kind of, like you and me, for example, this is, such an amazing opportunity and such a great kind of friendship that we have. And it's, it's about choosing to say, no, I'd rather do a Zoom, with Diane in Mexico, rather than, go out with the gang and just have one too many drinks on a school night on a Tuesday night and not really get anything out of it. Talk about Instagram, so you've got to be a little bit
discerning.
Yeah, discerning, and also just have that kind of what's the word? You've got to value yourself and say, there's a commodity. My time is precious, but my time is worth something, and the way that I kind of feed my brain is important. It's not just kind of, I'm going to sit around and gossip and not really get anything out of gossip about, all of that.
And it's true, because as you're saying too, and I think about this, is that when we say yes to something, we say no to something. So when we're saying yes to, and again, there's always room for having fun, but when we say yes to, socializing a lot, then we're saying no to maybe watching podcasts or learning or taking the time to research, what does it look like to get in touch with the government to increase the time for maternity leave in Dubai. You can't do that on 3 martinis at the club or at the restaurant, which is not, it's all good, but it is about discerning. And one thing that I was watching a podcast, someone who I follow, Gary V in New York City, is very highly, remember, I just love him so much. And I'm like going to go to V school this summer. I just, pre-ordered his new book, and I value his word. He's amazing. He really speaks the no BS talk. And he had said something yesterday that I never really heard before. And I mean, after 2 decades of always personally growing and business learning and all these mentorships, he said something about accountability. And he said, and this was key for me, and it took something away. I'd like to share this, especially as you're growing with SheWell, and it's such a powerful want for you and desire, is he said that you have to have an accountability to your word. So I look back on me and I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast, and I'm talking. And the accountability has to come from matching my action with my words. And so I think that there's something to be said for accountability in whatever it is that we're doing, right? And so that also comes from, how are we holding ourselves accountable for how we're spending our time? What are the conversations that we're having? How is it either helping us as we leave the room, leave the restaurant, leave the lunch with the chairman? How do we leave feeling? Because it always is about how people leave us feeling. Right. And there's always going to be times where we need to be there for our girlfriends. Our girlfriends are definitely there for us. Our partners are there. We're there for them always. And there's always going to be that support. But for the most part, if we know what our North Star is, when we know that we're wanting to ignite our inner essence, there's a part of us that needs to take accountability for, are we actually resonating with that? Are we actually operating from the place where that exists? Right. It's the law of magnetism again. And so I think it's really important for us to be okay with the courage to be disliked. If our friends are like, you're always home, when are you going to stop working on that thing? We're missing you, and giving the time for that, but knowing that it's when we feel that that's the amount of time that we're able to give to those people and those beautiful friends and that energy in that environment, and making sure that we're not compromising what our North Star is yearning inside of us. And I think that, and I speak for my own self, is that's what happened to me in the last couple of years, is the reflection, taking inventory, and just kind of a self-awareness of how am I feeling around what I'm doing? And is there something like just like lurking in the background saying, I want your attention on this, and I really wanted to give my attention? I had to take accountability from everything, from like enjoying, wine and doing all those things. I'm like, those things, I'm starting to be intolerant of things that are not helping me grow. And it doesn't have to be black and white for some people. For some people it is, but it is really important for us to be okay with that, regardless of what other people need from us, or regardless of what we feel we need to honor other people for, because we can only give and ignite within ourselves that we can then give out to other people, because we feel that we are in a different vibration than being depleted or not following that dream. And then all of those negative self-talks come in whenever we're not caring for our own soul's essence.
Yeah. And I think actually, this is actually something I think maybe gets a bit easier the older you get, because you can kind of explain it so amazingly, like you just did, right? You understand who you are. You understand what kind of makes you tick. You understand what makes you creative. You understand what makes you happy. But I think, in your kind of teens and 20s and, early 30s, maybe that has to be a bit more instinctual. I think you haven't necessarily put the work in, or find the way to put the work in to actually be able to kind of put words to, so I was, like I was saying in the conversation, like, why was I that girl in the university library studying feminism and not really being able to understand why, and then setting up this company? What am I doing here? Like, why am I writing about feminism? And everyone was like, you're not a feminist. You like clothes. I was like, yeah. Yes, and I think the older you get, the more you're able to kind of, really ground yourself. But the more that you are able to understand who you are, you have an accountability to yourself to actually say, now I've actually got here. Now I understand who I am. My goals have to get bigger. I have to be less, I have to call myself out, and you have to. And one of the things that I always try and remember is, always say what you mean. I find that a really useful phrase to me, because I'm guilty of hanging out with my girlfriends and just blah, 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 blah. And I found, I'm trying to hold myself accountable to what I say in all sorts of kind of social settings and professional settings, and just be really truthful about what I mean. And when I say something, act on it. I find that for me is really important, because I find when I just kind of pulled in all directions, I start saying things I don't mean, and I feel very conflicted. When I say, yeah, sure, I'll be there on Tuesday night, oh yeah, no worries, I can help you. It doesn't matter. Of course I have time, and I'm not being truthful, and so I'm trying to be a little bit much more. I'm trying to be better at just actually kind of being honest and trying to say what I mean, and that I can actually follow up on, because I think that's kind of important. To just be a consistent person,
because you're building trust and reliability, right? So if someone says, she always says she's going to be there, guess who doesn't show up? So we never want to be that person. I also think to piggyback off of that is, we can always be assertive and we can always be compassionate. So one of the things I learned from being a yes person, I was such a yes person, and I saw my energy was leaked all over, and I was depleted, I was exhausted, I was making the wrong decisions, I was hiding out. Like, it was just not healthy. And I realized that you could still say no, but still have assertion and compassion. So someone coming to me, it's okay to say no, but saying, and not making it about them. Like, I don't want to hang out with you. You hang out, you go out too much. But no, just saying, I would love to, but I'm finding, like, for me, I don't have the bandwidth right now. So, as much as I'd love to, right now is not a good time for me. I don't have the bandwidth, or I'm just, I'm working on something else right now. So that just doesn't work with my schedule in this moment. And it's not about them. So being able to have that assertion and compassion, you're still reliable, you're still trustworthy, and you're still able to sift and sort where you can bring your energy and contribute your energy, right? Because you want to be able to be there for other people when you're in the present moment with others. And we can't do that if we are shortchanging our own self and not showing up for ourselves first. And then when we do go out for the beautiful evening with all the girls, it's so much fun, and we're in the present moment, and we fueled ourselves first, and we need that night with the girls. We need that time to be out. We don't want to be at home, because it's, we've been at home for 6 days, and that 7th day we need to go out and just forget about all the stuff that's left there. So there is that balance. And I know balance can be like a word that's like, there's no such thing, but I believe there's a balance in our energy and how we could flow that, so that we feel that we've got that sense of peace around us to use that at a high rate that comes from energy, not from the doing, right?
Yeah. that was always work in progress for me. But I tell you, when you've got a kind of child, newborn, young child, that teaches you boundaries, because you're like, you have to be able to, you have to say no, because if you're getting up multiple times in the evening, or she still wakes up at between 5 to 6 every day, and I'm there every day, you can't go out to your best friend's birthday, the third birthday celebration in a week, till 2 a.m. You just can't. So actually it's been quite good for me being able to say, just learning, because learning, and now for myself, it doesn't have to just be, I can't because of my daughter, but actually learning that language of like, it's not that anything about you, it's not that I don't want to, I just can't right now.
Exactly.
And it's
okay
that's the kind of, so I kind of having a bit of a tutorial in that now, because you just have to protect yourself.
You do.
Yeah.
And it's how you show up as a mom, being all of yourself, right? Not the depleted mom, not the leaked energy mom. How does it feel being a new mom? And I have a question for you as we close out, but I would love to know how you feel. Is there anything that surprised you? Are you shocked with how fabulous you are as a mom? Do you let yourself go for not being, not knowing it all as you're a new mom? What does that look like for you?
I think I believed, because I was the ultimate career girl, right? And because I did have so many kind of health challenges around having a kid, I think I let myself believe a story that wasn't necessarily true, that I wasn't a natural mother. Do you know what I mean? I think I let myself believe. And also, if you are, it's hard for you to have kids, it's easier for you to say, to kind of go, oh, well, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be, maybe I'm meant to be better in business, I'm just not a mother. So I think probably the thing that kind of struck me was that I do, I have instincts around my daughter, who is absolutely amazing. I just need to say it. She's just gorgeous, and that is a kind of wonderful surprise in itself, just this incredible being arise in your life. But I kind of really, quite early on, I was having instincts, and it was quite easy not to trust those instincts and always want someone's advice, because I think I was very much like, well, this isn't something maybe that I need to learn. I'm not a natural mother. But then all the feedback I was getting was, no, you're spot on. Your daughter better than anyone else. And so it's been a bit of the nice surprise is that actually I found it easier to kind of understand what might be wrong with her, or understand, why she's not eating, or, what we need to fix or adjust or whatever. That's been really nice over the past 6 months, just to kind of get that confidence of like, I have it in me, I have it in me. Just because it wasn't necessarily easy or quick to kind of become a mother doesn't mean that you're not able to be a good one, which is nice. Yeah.
It's funny because we said at the beginning of our chat, talking about how we're all animals, right? You're like, we're all animals. I can't remember why you said that, but now we're closing out. And I want to say, like, you don't see a mom giraffe say to the other one's like, am I doing it right?
You don't, do you? But we're like, oh my God.
Is there a blog that I need to, like, is it on Goop? Can I find out on Goop? I love Goop all day long. But I think it's really important. And I think that, even in listening to you, it sounds to me that when we chatted about second guessing ourselves, I feel like this is a perfect example of never to have to second guess yourself, because chances are your intuition, your first instinct is going to be the one. And being able to own that is huge, right? And I think that's such a powerful place to be, is to know that we already know. And sometimes we can cloud ourselves when we think, well, we have that feeling, that innate feeling, whether you're birthing a child or a business or a new relationship or just relating to yourself, we have a knowing. And a lot of times what the ego starts to come in is like, or am I right? Or is that right?
Yeah.
We got to go on Google. We got to go on, all these things, maybe AI now, who knows, am I doing it right? AI, chances are, before they do, right? Maybe don't go there so fast. So I think it's beautiful for you. And I could feel that even through our previous conversation around what you're doing with SheWell, so impactful, and just being able to witness this beautiful essence of you in your feminine energy and your masculine energy, being able to continue to see that unfold however and whenever it's meant to be, and just knowing that you are creating residual impact that you won't be able to see, but you know what, your daughter will be able to see that as well too. Who knows what this is going to be as maybe even a legacy for her right? I think it's just so beautiful. That unknown is really exciting. We don't want to know everything. How much fun would it be if we knew everything?
No, it's really cool. Yeah, and I think it's useful in life sometimes just to be, if you're tapping into instinct quite a lot on a day-to-day level, it does make you probably, you're opening up that kind of muscle in your brain to kind of be instinctive in other areas of your life. Because I think quite often, gut instinct is wrong, right? Because your head is like, your logical brain is like, no, well, I got a bad feeling about that meeting. No, but on paper it was good, and we're going to do that, no. And it's quite nice sometimes in your life just to have to be like, no, the instinct is it. The instinct, forget the head. I'm working on instinct now, which is, it's a better muscle to build, or it's a muscle that gets a bit weak. So yeah,
it's like working out. You have to do it every day. Or like another mentor of mine always, like Jim Rohn said, you can't brush your teeth on Monday and think your teeth will still be clean on Friday. You have to do it daily. Right? So brush your teeth daily for clean teeth. So I would love to, as we close out, and I would love to also definitely have you back on, because this is just the birthing of SheWell, your beautiful online community and community for women in the Middle East around hormone health, reproductive health, mental health, and all of the things that come with, being a woman and our bodies and our minds and our wisdom. And so I would love to have you back on, obviously, and see where you end up in the next year. And so in closing, I always like to ask a question. It's never the same. Just depends on who I'm having a chat with. If you were to have some words of wisdom for your daughter as she's moving along, based on your wisdom, based on your experience, what is some simple kind of grounded mantra, if you will, that you feel you would like to share with her, that she can carry with her through her years as a woman?
Oh, there are so many. The most important one, and I'm trying to think of her as well, the kind of personality that I see coming. I think it's always just like, oh God, there are so many. I wish I had a chance to think about them.
Put you on the spot. Whatever comes out is perfect.
No, I think it's just like, that kind of sense of just, you've just got to show up and the rest will happen. And I'm trying to think about what I would say to her specifically rather than anyone else. Yeah. But I think it's just like, there's a real value in sometimes just, you don't need to be the best person in the room, but there's such a value of you showing up, contributing, to situations in your life, and then just kind of knowing that the rest will kind of unfold if you kind of take that first step. Wow. I think, and I think that's also for me as well, like when I was starting out a company, it's like, I didn't know how I'm going to end up. I hadn't got a clue, but I just knew that if I went to a networking event and I just showed up and I just kind of put myself out there, the rest will come. And I think that's really nice advice for her. But there's so much advice. And I do ultimately love Joe Dispenza's message of like, strong women will change the world.
I love it. I don't remember hearing that. So that's beautiful.
No,
I need to hear that today.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. But I think that's for her, that's too strident. I think for kind of mother-daughter, I'd be like, just all you have to do in life is just take the first step, show up, and the rest will figure itself out.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that as well too, because it literally is, so I don't want to call it tagline, but my intention mantra for my community and starting with myself is my wish for others is to follow that magic that ignites their inner essence, right? So that's where I, kind of birthed this, is when I look back on the last couple of decades of my life, maybe 3 decades of spiritual development and curiosity, if you will, right? We're all spiritual, but we all lie in different areas of spirituality and awareness. Is I noticed that no matter what my exterior was, and it was, got some stuff that I've been through in my life while I was still writing my Lucy's Weekly Smiles and still providing like insight on who I am. And it is that I would still follow the magic that would ignite my inner essence. And so while things could have been chaotic, traumatic, challenging, scary, fearful, dark, truly, is that when I would follow the magic, I would still ignite the inner essence within me that no one can take. And so I feel like that sounds like something that you're sharing with your daughter. And I think it's really beautiful because we are unique, right? And if we just show up as who we are, it's almost like that integrity, then whatever's meant to happen will happen. You don't have to second guess it. You don't have to have regrets. I don't believe in regrets. If, we hold our own selves true, allow the rest to unfold as we're owning our own energy and owning our own identity.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. And by showing up, it's kind of implied that you're showing up authentically, right? You show up as yourself, just don't be scared. You'll be Marmite to some people, have the courage to be disliked, but just show up, and then you'll find the things that will attract to you, and the path will kind of become clear. Because we don't know what's going to happen.
Oh my gosh. Not at all. We have no clue. I don't know what's going to happen today.
No, good things.
Good things. Yeah. And it's one of the things too I have on my screensaver on my phone is, and it's funny. So my nephew's partner, Jess, put this on her Instagram months and months and months ago, and it just hit my heart. It was a beautiful background, and it was just a sentence that said, "What if it all works out?" And I've had it on my screen. I'm like, so every day, because I'm on my phone, that's what I see is, what if it all works out? Right? Or even things like, what could be better than this? Or what magical surprises await me today? I mean, at the end of the day, our dominant thought creates that, that vibration of what we receive. And so it is a choice. It is a commitment. It is a discipline to say, like, how are we expecting life to show up is going to be evidence of our thoughts. And so if we can, not 100%, because we're all human on this earth, plane. But if we can, for the most part, kind of sit and say, what am I thinking? Can I expect magic to happen rather than expect the same, shitty traffic or just another day different, another whatever different day. So it's really important for us. Our self-talk does support us, and it does steal from us at the same time. So I think it's really important for us who we're hanging out with, what are the conversations, who's impacting us, and what is the energy that we're making sure that we have on a daily basis that's fueling our desires and fueling our creativity.
Yeah. Love it.
I'm so grateful for you. This was amazing.
Oh no, it's so much fun.
Oh my gosh. And you probably have to get to bed.
No, it's not. The night is young.
The night is young.
Friday. No, it's not. It's Saturday night. It's not Friday night. It's Saturday.
Oh yeah, Saturday. It's 11 years. No, we're not 11 years apart. We're 11 hours apart. But I just want to say a thank you to you for taking time out. You're such an inspiration. I'm excited to see how the rest of this unfolds for you and be any kind of support with all that you're doing, and to witness your beautiful daughter grow. And I hope to see you at another Dr. Joe. I think we're going to be heading to one in November. We'll see. And I am manifesting a trip to Dubai. So that's I'm a manifester with my human design.
Well, we've discussed how much I love Mexico. It will happen. It will happen. But thank you so much. And what you're doing is just wonderful. So, I'm just pure pleasure to be involved. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So my darling friends and listeners, and those that are able to watch this, it's such a heart full of gratitude for allowing you to witness this. And I'm just really hoping that our conversation today with Sophie allows you to have something ignite within yourself. Maybe there's something that you haven't birthed yet that you're not sure about, and maybe something in this conversation allowed you to feel this confidence or maybe some wisdom. If this awesome conversation has helped you in any way, I would love any feedback in the comments on YouTube. I would love if you can subscribe, if even share with someone who maybe you're thinking about that needs to hear this conversation. I will make sure, Sophie, where can we find you to follow what you're doing? I know you're just launching SheWell, Instagram handle, anything that you want to share as well. And we'll maybe
SheWell.me, SheWell.me.
Okay, perfect.
As in
and
SheWell.me.
Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes and in the description. And just really, really awesome to be with you. So grateful, and I can't wait to have you back on.
Oh my God, back at you. It was amazing, and I'd love to come back. Just tell me. Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Love to everyone.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hey friends, thank you again for following and tuning in to the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. It really does truly support my mission to help inspire you through our beautiful guests that I also want to thank, who have come on to share their beautiful stories of transformation. If you want to connect with me privately, you can actually go right to my website, lucysmiles.com. Feel free to send to me a personal email. You can also catch my newsletter by subscribing, which also includes my weekly intuitive messages. If you're on social media, you can follow me with my handle, I am Lucy Smiles. And if this was inspiring to you and something help support you on whatever the journey is that you are going through, please feel free to review, write a comment, and most importantly, if you can subscribe and share this episode and all our other episodes, that would be amazing. My dream and my mission is to truly help you to follow the magic that ignites your inner essence. And so until next time, we will catch you soon. I hope to catch you on the next episode.